So here's how to create a new WordPress site in Cloudways. So in this lesson, I'll first show you how to set up a new account from scratch, and you'll create your first WordPress site as part of that process. It couldn't be simpler. Then I'll show you how you'll create brand new WordPress sites in future. Again, ridiculously easy. And finally, I'll point out the most important features in the control panel you'll need to know about in future. Although this lesson is about 10 minutes long, actually creating the starter site itself literally takes seconds. So first visit Cloudways. The link is below this video. Click Get Started Free in the header. You'll have to fill in a form with your details and click a link in an email they send you to confirm. I'm going to skip over that part here. So now you're asked to set up your account and also the details of the first WordPress site you want to create, all at the same time. Unlike other hosting providers, we don't need to provide a domain name here. Your account isn't tied to a particular domain name, which makes it way more flexible. Now let me explain a bit of Cloudways terminology because it can maybe be confusing for new users at first, especially if you're used to more traditional hosting. Server. So think of the server as the space that you're buying for $10 a month or whichever package you decide to buy. With Cloudways, you can actually have multiple servers within your one single Cloudways login. You might only ever have one server that you put all your WordPress sites on. All those sites will just use up the resources, they will share the resources on that one server. Or you might have one server for your own live website and your own development sites, and then maybe one server per client so that you can more tightly control how many server resources each client has available. It really depends, and you can chop and change and move things around really easily. For now, one server is fine. Application. Here it says we are deploying our managed application. And that's just a fancy way of saying we're creating a WordPress site. That's all. So application in Cloudways terms just means WordPress. Now you can also host other applications in Cloudways, you see, like Magento or Drupal or Joomla. But for us, application is WordPress. So because this is a new account, Cloudways is having us create our server space and our first app at the same time. Name your managed app. That's just the name of our first WordPress site. So that can be starter site. Name your managed server. Now this is only because we're first setting up our new server here. You won't be asked for this when we set up new sites on this same server in future, of course. You can name it whatever you like. I call mine DBW, which is my company name, Design Build Web. It doesn't really matter what you call it. Name your project. Projects are just a way of grouping your sites together logically, purely for your own organizational purposes. Think of projects like folders. You might not want your sites organized in any way, so just give this a general name like sites or something like that. I've created a project called No Stress WordPress because I'll put the starter site and the case study site that we'll create in the No Stress WordPress course. Okay, so we've named our server space, we've named our first WordPress site that we're putting on our server. Now to choose which data center we want our server to be on. This is great because these are the same data centers used by lots of great WordPress hosts like WP Engine and Flywheel and Kinsta. We can pick which one we like. Now I always choose Vultr because it's the best balance of price and performance. You got brilliant high performance cloud hosting, not like cheaper shared hosting. Now AWS and Google Cloud, they're for more higher traffic sites with a higher demand for server resources. But it is great to be able to later use one of these if your needs grow. Choose server size. You're only going to need 1 GB right now, so just choose 1 GB. You can easily scale this up in future if you need to. Now note that server size here actually relates to the amount of RAM your server has or how much memory it has to work with. And that can have a big impact on how fast your sites load and perform. And when you change the amount of RAM, you're also changing the amount of physical space you have, plus bandwidth, plus how many processor cores your account has, which all impact site speed. So the more RAM you choose for your account, you also at the same time get more space and bandwidth and processors, which you will need when you get more traffic, when more people use your site at the same time. And of course, you pay more per month. And remember, all the sites that you have on this one server will all share these resources between them. Choose server location. The idea is to choose the physical location of the server that is closest to you and your website's audience. If your visitors are mainly from the UK, for example, choose a UK server. Your site will load fastest for those UK visitors. There's no right or wrong answer here. I mean, for me, I actually have a global audience for my own website, so it's very difficult to choose. I choose New York because maybe 60% of my visitors are from the US, and then launch now. Once you click that, at this point, you have to wait for the server and application to be set up and also your trial to be activated, which doesn't take long. But once it's all ready to go, in your Cloudways control panel, click Applications. Here's a list of all your sites on this server. Here's the starter site installation I created. Let's click into it. So notice now there are a few different menu items related to this particular WordPress site, the starter site. We're in access details at the moment, so this is all the details you'll need to access the starter site in future. Click the little external link icon here to view this WordPress site in a new tab. Doesn't look very pretty at the moment, but that's okay. We'll be developing it further throughout this course. Now notice all Cloudways sites, you get a fancy randomly generated URL like this one. You can use this site at this URL for as long as you like. So clients and co-workers can all access it really easily without having to set up a separate subdomain just to start a new site. And where are the login details to access the WordPress admin panel? We'll come back to Cloudways. Still in access details under admin panel. Notice you can click here to jump directly to the WordPress admin panel in future. Here's your username and here's the password that's randomly generated by Cloudways for you. So you just click to copy it to your clipboard. One quick thing to do before anything else, this is important. Log into the new site using the login details that we just saw. Go to Plugins in the admin menu and deactivate the Breeze caching plugin for now. This is a caching plugin that's added by Cloudways, and we want to deactivate it while the site is in development. Don't delete it, but we do not want a caching plugin to be running while we're developing websites, which is something I'll talk about in more detail later. So that's it. At this point, you have your new Cloudways account as well as your fresh new starter site installation all ready to develop further, and you can move on to module 2. Well, what about in future if you want to create new WordPress sites on this same server that you just created? The process is almost identical. If you want to create a new WordPress site completely from scratch, well, you come back up to Applications, hit Add Application, select the server you already created, then choose WordPress as the application, pop in the name of the new WordPress site, and choose the folder to put it in. And that's it. It's incredibly easy. It takes seconds. Now, if in future you want to create a new WordPress site, not from scratch, but one that is cloned from your starter site, well, there are two ways, and both of them are really easy. One, come to Applications again, and then click the three dots here and choose to clone the app. That's one way of doing it. Or alternatively, if you click into the site itself, hover over this circular icon here, bottom right, and click Clone App. It's really that easy. So you'll have a new WordPress site, an exact copy of your basic starter site. Now, for the purposes of this lesson, installing our basic WordPress installation, we're done. And you're welcome now to move on to module 2 to start getting it all set up. But before we wrap up and move on, I'd like to take this chance to give you just a quick tour of some of the basics of Cloudways to get you oriented. So we're still in the settings for our WordPress application that is our starter site. There are some settings panels here. I just want to point out the important ones to you. Come to domain management. Later, when you want to point a domain name at this site, let's say you're ready to go live, you'll just type the primary domain name here, save the changes, and then follow the instructions to change your DNS records on your domain to point to this server's IP address. It is super easy. Cloudways will update all the settings in your WordPress site as well, so there's no need to do any find and replace for the new domain name. Over in SSL certificate, this is where you create a free SSL certificate so your live site can be on HTTPS and therefore fully secure. Now actually, Cloudways host all your new development sites on HTTPS anyway, so the sites using the generated Cloudways URL are automatically secure. So you only have to create an SSL certificate here when you point your live domain to this site. Your live sites on the live domain really must be HTTPS these days. And finally, under Migration Tools, here you can download the brilliant Cloudways Migrator plugin, which helps you transfer a WordPress site from your current host to Cloudways. Again, it's incredibly easy and very fast. I used it on all my sites when I transferred over from Flywheel. And that's all you really need to know for the settings for each application, each site. At this stage, we're definitely all set to continue to Module 2 and start to get our starter site set up. But before you go, you need to be aware of how Cloudways handles email for your sites, both domain emails and transactional emails. Very important. And I thought I'd make a separate little video below explaining it, which you can catch right below this one.